What you guys doing, bro? What you doing, Nova? What are you doing over here, bro? What you doing over here, man? Huh? What are you doing over here? Man, look at this thing, you guys. This thing is getting clapped, dude. There's bird doo-doo, man. Oh man, this thing is freaking bad, you guys. It hurts me to see it like this. Obviously, haven't touched the car since SEMA, and you can tell. Definitely need to do something about that. But the video is not about this car, or I should say that car. It's about this car, right? Because guess what? It is back from the exhaust shop, you guys. I want to give a big shout out to 6651 Customs for hooking us up with the exhaust. We took it to them because, for one, welding skills, not so much. You know, we can make a bracket here and there and all that, but I don't trust my welding when we got to come down to making a complete exhaust kit. Not to mention, I don't have a pipe bender, cutter, all that stuff, and it just doesn't make sense. We're gonna let them do their thing. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. First of all, I want to say, everyone, all the new subs, all the OGs, I appreciate you guys. And Merry Christmas, by the way. I know we're a little bit late, and Happy New Year. That's right. I know it's crazy. A whole year has gone by already on the channel. I am super grateful for all of you guys and all the new subscribers, of course, and everything we've been able to do and show you guys and just kind of, you know, work hand in hand together, right, at the end of the day. But also, one other thing I want to introduce you guys, we kind of did it a little bit, we kind of kicked it off a little bit ago, but it was kind of a low key, I guess you can say. And the questions, right? You guys have so many questions all the time, and with more subscribers, it's harder and harder to keep up. Not to mention, we have over 400 videos on the channel, right? Yeah. Questions. Again, you guys ask me a lot of questions, and it's hard to keep up. So on the website, gooseperformance.com, if you guys have like questions about your build or products we've used on the channel or anything that you think I can be of help to, or just something like that, you can go on the website, book an appointment with me, yours truly, one-on-one. It'd be like a little 30-minute video call, Zoom call, whatever you want to call it. There is a small fee, you guys, because like once again, I can't get to everybody, but that is available. So go check it out on the website. But exhaust, let's talk about the exhaust. As a matter of fact, let's just start this thing so you guys can hear what's going on. All right, you guys, so I get a lot of questions about the exhaust on these cars, and of course every car is different, right? And it really comes down to, for one, exactly the car, two, the configuration of the engine and motor, transmission, and all that good stuff, right? Not to mention horsepower, you guys. That is a big one. Like that guy right there, twin turbo, yeah, whole different exhaust. But let me get this up in the air and show you guys what we got going on. Oh yeah, look at that, baby. Oh yeah, this thing sits super low, you guys can tell. We're still waiting on the wheels, really. Long story short, you can see sway bar still just kind of clinking around here. Nothing's really set up for wheels, or I should say the suspension's not dialed in yet because of the lack of wheels we have, you guys. We can't even drive the car yet. We've kind of just putting it around still. From the driveway to the back here to the lift, the trailer and all that, the exhaust shop. But you can see exhaust is done, and the big part of that is the questions that we get on the exhaust, right? Obviously this is nothing fancy. The most fanciest thing we did is put the Black Widows on it, baby. That's right, these are the Black Widows. the 250 race Venoms, I want to say the 250 Venoms. I'm almost positive that's what we put on here, and I dig them. You guys heard it already, how good they sound. They're just no restriction whatsoever when you actually look in these things. So a lot of these mufflers, depending on what brand and everything else, like there's tons of restrictions inside of them, and it's really gonna, for one, change the tone of the sound of the car and everything else like that, not to mention affect horsepower, torque, and all that good stuff. Now what we did here, again, we got to go back and tighten everything up, but I did put V-band clamps. Everybody kind of asked me how I do my exhaust, or how I like to make sure they're done, is V-band clamps for sure. I always do a V-band clamp in the front, or I should say right after the exhaust exit down in the back here, and then up front as well down here, you guys. So that way, guess what, maintenance comes around. I'm a big guy when it comes to maintenance. If we can't take this thing apart or take things off to service other things, or it's a nightmare, what's the point, right? Like if we would have just welded it on and put like what do you call those collectors with the 3 bolts, you know how much of a pain in the ass that is when it comes to just servicing anything underneath here. It's so silly, so silly. So of course we did nothing crazy with the exhaust. We got an X pipe up there. Again, the best thing on here is the mufflers. Now this is a very reasonable exhaust as far as cost goes, so everything minus the mufflers is around 800 bucks. That's the V-band clamps, the piping, and all the way out to the tailpipe. There was about 800 bucks or so, give or take, minus the mufflers. Of course, the mufflers, I want to say they go between, what is it, like $150, maybe even less than that, if you guys get them on Black Friday a piece. Check out Black Widow, man. I'll put a link down in the description below for those if you guys are interested in those. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about sizing and kind of how we did this and how I go about a couple of these builds. What I see the most in the comments down below, and even just like driving videos and things like that, is what exhaust you're running, what size is that, you know? And like, again, it comes down to horsepower. Horsepower is always the biggest one. If I'm running anything below 400 horsepower, which is rare, right? 500 horsepower, 2.5 inch exhaust is perfect. Like, you don't have to go anything bigger than that, right? Anything bigger than that, it's overkill. If anything, you're losing horsepower. It has to do with, obviously, the velocity of the exhaust coming out and things like that. Science, let's put it that way. It's got to do with science. Right now, everything above 500, between 500 to 600, 3-inch exhaust all day. Right now, like the twin turbo Chevelle back there, 3-inch exhaust, we did like minimum. Like once you start getting into the turbos and supercharged cars, you got to do 3-inch exhaust, like bare minimum. If you would do anything bigger, now obviously it is a dual exhaust, so that helps. But always when you're doing power adders and you're above that 600 threshold, or just 550, even higher than that, like there's no ands, ifs, or buts. You got to do 3-inch exhaust. Now on this car, we did something different, and I've actually done it on quite a different builds along the way, is that we did a 3-inch. If you look here, we did 3-inch. Obviously we're coming from the collector here, V-band clamp. We did 3-inch all the way back into here, into the muffler, but out of the muffler right here where they go out back to the tailpipe, we did 2.5. Now you're asking me, why did we do that? Why didn't we not go 3-inch all the way back out? It's a good question. Now, a couple things. The biggest one is obviously sound, right? When you do exhaust, there's always a few different options you can do, right? Dual exhaust is probably the #1 option. Second one is, do I do H pipe or X pipe? You know, X pipe is going to give you a higher pitch sound and more horsepower on the top end. H pipe will give you kind of the opposite, a little bit more throaty, a little bit more, I guess, lower tone, but it is going to give you more torque in and down the road, or I should say on the low end. But again, I've seen a lot of H pipe stuff, but on trucks and things like that, when you're towing to try to get more torque. But anything above, once you hit 2,500 RPM or higher, you're just not going to see it. So horsepower is what you're going to gain if you do the X pipe. Not to mention the sound you're gonna get is a lot more like high pitched. It's definitely a lot louder sound when you're driving down the road. Now, also to kind of mellow that out a little bit as well, we're also gaining the horsepower there, right, with the X-Pipe. Once we go through here, through our exhaust, obviously, or I should say mufflers, that are going to do their thing. Why we didn't go 3-inch out here is, one, like I said, sound. This is a convertible. It's going to be a street car. It's not going to be anything crazy where, like, we're not too worried about, for one, like that extra 3 horsepower that we're going to gain from going from 3-inch from there all the way back out. You know, if we really wanted to, we could dump them right there, but we're not going to do that. Again, we're going to come out and then come out here. Now, 2.5-inch is kind of gives us that mellow in a sense. It's not going to be as loud when it gets to the back here, and it's going to tone it down a little bit. But you heard it here, you guys, with that cam in there. It's still really nice. It sounds good. And again, you're driving this thing every day. The last thing you want to do is drone yourself out. And I've done cars with 3-inch exhaust all the way out, and with the cam, and after, like, I don't know, 40 minutes of driving doing that just it just gets old. It gets old quick. Me personally, man, it's you want to be able to enjoy the car, right, at the end of the day. And this car is going back to Atlanta again, top down. You don't want to be driving and just hearing that all the time. So, not to mention, it's like I said, it's not going to be a race car or nothing like that. So that's going to be perfect. Now, what I will say this is that we are already, I'm not worried about any kind of crazy effect that's going to have going from 3-inch to 2.5, because we're coming out solid 3 inches. I mean, look at that collector flange out of the header. We got some nice headers coming out here, and then still 3-inch, 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 3-inch. I mean, we have 3-inch all the way to here. So you're talking about a quarter of the exhaust. Like, so it's not going to affect it. So the other reason is room and spacing. Now, I have noticed on these cars, once you put coilovers, man, and you got the bigger rear end as well, and you got adjustable suspension, sway bars, and then bigger. This car, we narrowed the rear end. So the rear end is actually narrowed 1.5 inches on each side. So what that's going to do, it's going to push this whole wheel inward, and there's going to be that much less room. You can see how tight it is here. And honestly, once I get the other wheels, this might even be an issue right here. We're going to have to wait and see, but this is a quick fix. Not to mention why we do the V-band clamp up here, because if we need to, we can change this one pipe out and be done. But once again, it's clearance. Once you got in here and you're trying to route the 3-inch exhaust, man, it's challenging. Ask any exhaust guy. They'll tell you it's super challenging when you get into the 3-inch exhaust and routing it around old cars, gas tanks. The lack of room is crazy. But yeah, that was the biggest reasons there is, for one, sound, obviously, kind of dampen it down a little bit. 2 is the lack of room, right? But again, it's totally up to you guys. This is how I've been doing the exhaust for a little bit now on use kind of these 500. This is about 500 horse, 530, I should say. So it's just closer to 500 horse. Again, that's just borderline of the 3-inch exhaust. So to me, this is like the perfect sound that I've found that I really enjoy. And it's not to mention, you're still going to get plenty of power coming out. You're going to still have plenty of flow out of the exhaust, velocity and everything else like that, escaping, getting the gases out of the motor. Now, I will say this, whenever you do your exhaust, for whatever reason, you go from a 3-inch to a 2-inch, or I'm sorry, from a 3-inch to a 2.5 or vice versa, always get your car tuned, because that's going to affect basically the whole tunes as far as, you know, the way this thing runs, rich, lean, you name it. So this thing has not been tuned yet. Obviously, we had to wait to get the exhaust and everything else on it, because it definitely affects all that. So keep that in mind, you guys, when you guys are doing these exhausts and you want to do an upgrade on your exhaust system. Always get your car tuned afterwards, for sure. So the other thing I wish we would have done a little bit, but it really came down to we couldn't get them in time, mandrel bends. If you can do mandrel bends, guys, that's ideal. Obviously we did not do mandrel bends here. We just kind of I let them do their thing. They have a pipe bender down there, and they kind of did as best as possible with what they had there, with basically straight pipe. But mandrel bends definitely helps, and any restrictions, eliminates any restrictions whatsoever. But mandrel bends are definitely your best friend. And then what we did here is kind of a nice clean tuck look. We just basically hide it in that pocket. Perfect. Later, once again, if he wants to do something with the tips or exhaust or the rear bumper here, he can always has the option, because the pipe is right there, ready to go, reroute everything, nice and neat. But I am digging it, you guys. But like, again, I am a little worried, man, because we're waiting on wheels, you guys. We can't drive this thing yet. Once again, if that's going to clear or not, I am hoping it does. Like I said, worst case, we just redo the back end from that pipe back, but that's it. But that is the exhaust, you guys. I'm hoping this helps you guys out. If you guys are doing, of course, your guys' LS swabs, and you're like, man, what do I do for exhaust? This is a great way to do it. And you can hear the sound you're going to get. It's still loud enough. You still got the chop, but it's not going to be obnoxious. It's not going to drone you out. It's not going to just when you're driving, you're like just tired of it, especially if you guys are doing cruises and long road trips and things like that. But this is the combination I like to roll with. Anything that just that borderline 500 horse, 530, 525 horse, anything like that, this is a perfect combination. It seems to work well for us, and hopefully it does you too. But once again, you guys, man, I am excited for the upcoming year. Can't wait to show you what we got going on. Hopefully we can get this thing back on the road one day.